First off, I just want to kind of communicate how grateful I am that you're here and grateful that everyone here is safe. Definitely understand that this is a stressful time, especially for people trying to navigate running a business. So I'm going to go ahead and hand off this presentation to Victor, and he will speak on the CARE Act.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for that introduction, John. And I also wanted to thank everybody for attending. I know that we are in some challenging times right now with, COVID-19 and the economic environment that it brings with it. What we're going to talk about today, basically 4 main topics, and I want you to think of this as kind of a survey rather than getting into the weeds right now. It gives a broad sort of understanding of the stimulus package that came down from the government to help businesses and individuals, entrepreneurs who are struggling right now. We can always get into, more details of this as we progress, but we'd like to get some feedback after this presentation to see what areas we can focus on to provide the most value and the most poignant answers to your questions. So what we're going to be talking about today is giving a CARES Act overview. And then within that, what the EIDL, which is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, and the PPP, what the considerations between those are. And Oren will talk about the employee tax credit, how that plays into both the EIDL and the PPP. And Adam will give some tips on kind of best practices that we should be thinking about right now in light of everything that's going on. So first of all, what is the CARES Act? The CARES Act stands for the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. And it is, the biggest stimulus package ever enacted in the history of stimulus packages. It's like the mother of all stimulus packages. It's $2.2 trillion rescue package, and it's used, or it's intended as a capital infusion package for both individuals and businesses in this time of crisis. So the CARES Act actually is going to be administered by the SBA, the Small Business Association, who will be providing the loans themselves. And again, they're broken down into the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the EIDL, and Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP. Let's start with the EIDL. The purpose of the EIDL is to cover for businesses lost revenue that would be used for working capital. All right, so it's pretty broad, what working capital is. It could include things such as paid sick leave, payroll also, buying materials, raw materials for making a product, rent, and making repayment of different obligations that particular business has. All right, so who's eligible for the EIDL? It's for companies that have less than 500 employees, but they must have been in business prior to January 31st, 2020. There is an interest rate of 3.75% for for-profit companies, but if you're a nonprofit, the interest rate is 2.75%. And this is a 30-year loan. Now, what is interesting about the EIDL is it provides up to a $10,000 emergency advance, which is basically a grant. And initially, the government wanted to provide kind of a blanket $10,000 advance for all businesses, but recently, over the last week, they've rolled that back. It's going to be $1,000 employee that the business has, up to $10,000, and that is a forgivable amount, $10,000. So it essentially acts as a grant. And the max loan amount that you can take out under the EIDL is $2 million. And the first payment on that will be, you have 6 months deferred. So you start paying that beginning 6 months. The Paycheck Protection Program it's a little bit more restricted in terms of its intended use. So what it can be used for is monthly payroll, mortgage and rent, and utilities, okay? Versus the EIDL, which the intended use can be for all working capital. Now, for a company to be eligible for payroll protection program loan, you have to have been in business on February 15, 2020. But also, it's a company, if you have a company of less than 500 employees, you can also be a sole proprietorship or an independent contractor. And self-employed individuals can also apply for this, and certain nonprofits can also apply for this. Now, the way that it works is, the loan amount that you can get is up to $10 million, but the way that it's tallied is you take your monthly payroll and your mortgage and your rent and your utilities, monthly amounts, and you multiply that by 2.5. Okay, and that is the loan amount that you can borrow. All right, now these PPP loans are forgivable so long as the covered loan is equal to the sum of the payroll costs incurred during an 8-week period. Okay, so that would be 2x rather than 2.5x. And 75% of that is used for payroll. So the other 25% can be used for mortgage, rent, and utilities. Okay, but again, this only covers up to, the forgivable portion only covers up to 8 weeks. Okay, so if you take the full amount, that covers about 10 weeks. It's 2.5 rather than 2. So that 0.5 amount is not forgivable, and it will be subject to interest as well, which I think right now is 1%. It's heavily subsidized by the Treasury Department. So let's talk about how the EIDL and the PPP can work together. If you're looking for more than 10,000 to be forgiven, all right, which is the maximum amount of the advance. So if you're looking for more than the 10,000 to be forgiven, okay, which is that grant, then you may be eligible to use the PPP to cover the difference, right? But you cannot use the EIDL for the same purpose as the PPP. So, if you're using the PPP to cover payroll and you take out the EIDL for the same purpose, then that loan amount forgiveness for the PPP would be subtracted by the amount of the EIDL advance that you use to cover it. For example, if your total payroll, rent, and utilities for 8 weeks, all right, equals 100,000, and you use the EIDL, the $10,000 up to the $10,000 full advance, then only $90,000 of the PPP is going to be forgiven. Okay, so
and the way to think about it, right, Victor, is that the PPP is intended for future expenses, where the EIDL is intended for loss that's already occurred.
Correct.
So when they wrote this, they had the intention of, okay, the EIDL is for like the disaster, the pain that you felt.
Yes, that's exactly it. If you want to think of it that way, the EIDL it's meant to cover disaster that's already happened. The PPP is intended to help folks going into the future to pay for, payroll, rent, utilities going forward. All right. So here are some considerations. All right. I think a lot of folks right now are thinking about reducing, their staff as their business is, losing revenue. But you have to remember that, the loan forgiveness under the PPP is going to be reduced. if you decrease the salary or wages of your employees by more than 25% for those folks who are making, for the employees that you have who are making less than $100,000 annualized, all right? Now, if you do let them go, all right, you will have until June 20th, 2020 to restore all of your full-time employees to the same salary levels that they had, for any changes that you made to their salaries between February 15th and April 26th. All right. So we can take questions later on the PPP and the EIDL, but right now I'm going to give it up to Oren to talk about the employee retention credit and see how the employee retention credit can also be used in tandem with the PPP and the EIDL.
Thank you very much, Victor. That was very good. I want to talk about the employee retention credit, what they call ERC. One thing that we need to understand that it's either the PPP, what you just spoke about, Victor, or the ERC. You cannot combine those two. So you need to figure out and analyze what is more favorable for your situation, your company. Just to understand what the employee retention credit is, you can get up to 50% of the first $10,000 that you paid your employee between March 12, 2020 until January 1st, 2021. Meaning you have about 8 months to pay an employee, and if you pay them up to $10,000, you can take $5,000 as a credit, which is great, but you have to check if the PPP will be more favorable for you. So in order to do that, there are some requirements, as far as the qualified wages, it's health benefit and the W-2 income of a full-time employee. So if you have a couple of part-time, they combine them to one employee, but you don't have to worry about it too much right now. Now, when it will be better to do a PPP or the ERC depends on the amount of payroll and employees that you have. If let's say you are an S corporation shareholder, so the magic number will be $24,000. I will do a quick calculation just for you to understand. According to the PPP, as Victor mentioned, you take the average cost of payroll and you multiply it by 2.5. So if let's say I'm a shareholder employee and I make $24,000, my average, if I divide it by 12, my average monthly will be $2,000. If I multiply it by 2.5, I will get $5,000, which is exactly, this is the breakpoint even with the employee retention credit, the $5,000. So if, for instance, I make $48,000, I might be better going with the PPP because I will get $10,000 relief instead of $5,000. So there are a lot of things to consider, and there is now, if you have more employees, you have to do it case by case and see overall what's more benefit for you. Now, in order to get this, you need to file Form 941 with your payroll company each quarter and request the credit. If your credit is higher than what you have to pay, then you can file Form 7200 to request credit. This is it for that.
Thank you, Oren. Really valuable information. So the whole idea today is really to give you valuable resources so you can use that for your business, for your colleagues, and if you have employees, and if you are an employee also, we want to make sure that you know what to do as well, in terms of the stimulus package. So one of the things that I wanted to impress upon you is that, even though we have this opportunity today, we always need to think about it, long term as well, midterm as well, not only the short term of today, because, if you think about it today and we rushing into getting this package, we got to make sure that we calculate how is it going to look in the future. And so, so three things that I wanted to talk about. One, in terms of getting financial organization, that would be very, very important. Planning again for the short term, midterm, and long term, and then reaching out to your resources, and you'll see why it would be valuable for you, because there are additional grants and there are additional organizations that are offering additional value that you could take advantage of, and which we'll talk about it in the next few minutes. The only certainty is uncertainty, right? We today are confronted with uncertain time, right? But that's really an illusion, because every time is uncertain. And today, challenging times like that just really remind us also about not only, what is going wrong, but also what we can appreciate and what we can value, and how important it is to plan for the future. And so, what we have an opportunity to do today is really adapt into the current environment, and then really emerge stronger and better on the other side. How do you handle the situation best? How are you prepared for times like this? One, some protection and management of protecting yourself, protecting your business, protecting your payroll. Again, you have available funds that, maybe for some of us, who are practically dealing with it, we see that maybe it's not getting here as fast as we want to, but you can take advantage of that. The second thing is really making sure that you're protected of losing your job or your business, whether it's through the stimulus package, through the unemployment, or the PPP and EIDL or the ERC. And then, one of the things that we see today also is that there's a lot of digital scamming going on right now, whether it's financial scamming, whether it's electronic scamming, that we have to make sure that we're aware of. And I'm sure some of you have seen your email getting all those weird files, and so that's something that we want to make you aware of. When you go into your bank, whether it's for the PPP or the EIDL, if you do it yourself, just make sure that you really understand all the provisions, all the details, so you're not putting yourself in a situation afterwards or in the future that could be, not as ideal or as optimal as you wanted it to be. And, all of a sudden it's not, you find out that it's not forgivable, and now you're on the hook to pay those funds that you didn't anticipate. So also, we see this, one of the things that we're dealing with is a lot of layoffs in the hospitality, the restaurant industry. Again, make sure that you contact a professional like Oren, like Victor, like myself, to really help you coordinate and identify and find for you the best ways to apply for those things, and make sure that you have all the documents that you need to prepare, all the taxes, if you need to show any taxes for 2018, 2019, and then see if there's additional benefits that you can enjoy. Or people getting like emails from the CDC, supposedly, that encourage them to get vaccinated. We've seen a lot of different types of attachments. We've seen a lot of emails that encourages you to buy masks, to buy, all of those antibacterial and all of those different equipments for protection. And, in essence, those are, attempts to get you to click on it and then hijack your control of your computer. And so you got to be cautious about that, all the phishing and email scams that are going on right now. And lastly, this is something that I think you'd gain a lot of benefit from. So what we all are, seeing in the news and everything that is happening right now, and we talked about it a little bit today, is the PPP, the EIDL, and the ERC. What a little bit less familiar, and it depends on what city or what county or what state you're in, of what additional resources that could be available to you. For example, if you're in Los Angeles County, there is a Verizon grant that offers a similar $10,000 advance that you can apply for. That, if you just Google Verizon grants, if you're in LA County, you'll probably find some information about that. If you're in your state, I would encourage you to Google or to search some of the grants that are available to you. For example, state, city, local, county business assistance. Also, there is Los Angeles Small Business Emergency Grant. That's something that you want to take a look at. What are the things that we talk to our clients, especially in this period of time, is if you have bills that perhaps you were affected and you're unable to pay them as efficiently as you would like to pay them, if you have some hardship, feel free to call your lender. If you have credit cards, if you have student debt, if you need to borrow money from your IRA, there are some additional restrictions that have been lifted. So, for example, from your retirement account up to $100,000 that you will not pay the penalty. If you needed to defer your student debt or the payment for your student debt, you're probably going to be able to get a deferral, which is different than a forbearance. If you have a car payment that is due and you wanted to defer it for 30, 60, or 90 days, you might be able to do that. If you have a mortgage that you wanted to defer, you might be able to do that as well. And it takes only a quick phone call to your bank, lender, or your loan servicer, and you'll be able to do that pretty easily, I would say. And then lastly is, some states are eligible, might be eligible for Amazon grants. Amazon has a grant that it makes available for about 3 or 4 different states. You might want to Google that. And if you want to get more information, I can definitely give you this information on one-on-one. And it gives you, again, a small business grant. And Facebook as well gives you a grant if you have minimum 2 employees of free advertisements and free resources to be able to promote your business on Facebook. So if you haven't used, for example, Facebook advertisement, which is like extremely valuable and extremely targeted, you can take advantage of some of those opportunities and benefit yourself and your business.
I guess I actually have a question for you, Oren, with the employee retention credit. I was reading about the $10,000 cap for individual employees. So I was a little confused when I was reading that. What is the $10,000 cap? So it's per employee. It's not for the entire credit, right?
Right. It's
okay.
It's per employee, meaning if, let's say, you have 10 employees, each one make $10,000, you can get a credit up to $5,000 per employee, which means total of $50,000, which is $5,000 per employee times the 10 employees that you're employed.
Right. And I didn't read this anywhere, but are there any restrictions of what the credit can be used for?
It's for employees. It's to retain the employees, so it's just employees. So if I continue hire an employee and I pay his payroll up to $10,000, I get the credit. It cannot be used to anything else, and this is why you must have employees in order to get that. So if you're like an Uber driver, you're not going to be able to use that because you don't have employees.
Right.
You might be able to use the PPP, So these are the requirements that you need to take in consideration when you choose which one to take, if it's the PPP or the ERC.
Right. Yeah, because the
Yeah. Also, Oren, speak to the stimulus package and the unemployment. You know, I know we had a client, a mutual client that we worked on, and you know, we're really considering whether, you know, what would be more beneficial. Would it be more beneficial to have the you know, unemployment, or would it be more beneficial to do the EIDL or the PPP? And you did a calculation, you know, and a consideration that I think would be valuable to share with the group.
It varies from one individual to another, depend on the structure. It depends on a lot of other components. But in general, if you are unemployed, part of the CARES Act is that the federal government will give the unemployed an extra $600 on top of what the state pays per week. Meaning, the maximum in California, for instance, of unemployment is $450 a week. So if you are registered, and you don't have to register with the federal, you just have to register with the state that you're in. And if you are registered as unemployed, you will get, for instance, from California, the $450, which is the maximum, plus the $600 from the government, from the federal government, which means you can get a check, a weekly check of $1,050 as unemployment, combined, the state and the federal. So, you know, some employees will get more being unemployed than working, because you can get up to $4,200 a month. That equates about $50,000 a year. So, and they extended the time that you're eligible for those benefits. So it's longer than usually. And the biggest thing that it's unprecedented, that you don't have to be an employee to get unemployment. You can be self-employed, meaning an Uber driver, a Lyft driver, an editor, someone who used to work on a 1099 and is not an employee per se, can still go and ask for unemployment and will get the same benefits. The only thing with unemployed, they get 50% of what the state usually gives. So if, let's say, it's $450, so they will get $225 plus the $600. So this is very, very, very good for self-employed people that don't have work right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, also another point that we wanted to mention, you know, if you're one of those business owners or entrepreneurs that, you know, you did have a good 2019, you could use some of the qualified deductions, or whether it's SEP IRAs or IRAs, or, you know, if you're an employee 401k, and you can defer that, I believe is to July 15 this year, whereas traditionally April 15.
Correct.
And so you might be able to do that. And also, if you're a solopreneur and you had high income, some of the things that you can do with your business is, you know, and that's one of the specialties that we have, is to create a significant deduction for you that it won't be due until 2021. So September of 2021 for the 2020 tax period. So, and this could be, you know, over time, hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can deduct. And in some cases, it goes into the millions of dollars that we could use as an expense from your business, and create, really, literally put more money in your pocket as opposed to the IRS's pocket. So, you know, this is why we're talking about organizing your financial affairs in such a way that you're not only taking advantage of, you know, resources today, federal or state or local, but also using the opportunities that you have in the tax law that you could benefit from in the future.
For those folks who are seeking unemployment, like the different sole proprietors, entrepreneurs who have been working for themselves, who may not have paid into the unemployment fund, would they still be eligible for unemployment, and how would they go about obtaining that?
That's a great question, and I touched on it before a bit. That yeah, before the COVID-19 and this CARES Act, there was not such an option for a self-employed person that is not employed per se as an employee to get unemployment. This changed, the CARES Act changed that, and as I mentioned, they wouldn't, from the state, they would not get 100%, they will get only 50% than what an employee will get. However, they will still be eligible for the $600 a week, $600 a week from the federal government. So if let's say I'm, again, an Uber driver. I used to work, I get a 1099 from Uber or Lyft, and I used to make $20, $30, $40,000 last year. Now, I cannot do that anymore for this period because I live in LA, there is a lockdown, people are not getting in and out. I made $0 today, this week, this month. So then I can show my 1099 income. Sometimes you have to show your Schedule C after the expenses. And according to that, the state will take your consideration. You will get unemployment from the state and plus the $600 from the federal government.
That's really good to know. I actually know quite a few artists. All right, you know, we're in Los Angeles. You know,
Right.
we have a ton of people who are in the industry, filmmakers, editors, folks like that who, because of the lockdown, all of a sudden they can no longer produce film. They can the amount of videos coming their way for editing has stopped. And you know they need help.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the case for a lot of people, a lot of professionals. I mean, even most of the solopreneurs, if you will, right, the 1099 individuals, whether the independent contractors, or there could be even attorneys, there could be marketing individuals, there could be people in the financial industry who are 1099, and that's a significant class of individuals, right, Oren?
Yes. As Victor said, especially in LA, production, you cannot gather, there is no congregation, so you cannot make a film, you cannot make so everything is stopped. So if you're a producer, an actor, photographer, whatever you do, there is no work, and then it trickles down to the editing and so on and so forth. So yeah, there are a lot of people that are infected by it, and I think the federal government have noticed that and did a blessed thing by creating this act to give those people in need the amount that they can. And another thing is that for those people, they can still apply for the PPP. It's not just for business owners. So that's great as well.
Right. Independent contractors are eligible for applying for the PPP. It is just have to be cognizant of how you're spending that, all right, and recognize that not all of it is going to be forgiven. So if you don't have that planned out, and you don't have a kind of like a predetermined use of funds for it that falls within the framework for its intended use, then it may not be forgiven, and you are going to end up paying, needing to pay it back plus interest in an amount that you may not have thought about when you applied for it. So it speaks to Adam's point. We're in unprecedented times, and I think there is kind of a knee-jerk reaction right now to kind of panic and just like get money. But recognize that some of the government handouts or seemingly government handouts, they do come with some strings attached. So it would behoove people to speak with an expert and just see exactly what those strings are, talk to them about its intended use and whether there may be an alternative to getting some of these, the PPP or the EIDL in terms of a tax credit or other grants and loans. And if you're experiencing hardship, there may be hardship when it comes to certain creditors, knocking down your door. There may be other avenues as well, like sending a hardship letter and having perhaps a professional negotiate on your behalf with your creditors to tug at their heartstrings maybe, but also there are certain legal remedies that you would have outside of the PPP, outside of the EIDL, more traditional legal remedies that we can discuss with you.
Everybody's still learning about this act. It just got rolled out not too long ago, and everybody rushed into it thinking that it would be one thing, and then we're discovering, a lot of different limitations, and we're seeing how it actually plays out. And so we want to share those things with you. So really, your expectations are matching with actually what's happening on the ground. Wonderful. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank John. I want to thank Victor, and I want to thank Oren. Thank you so much for your participation. All of the participants, thank you so much for taking the time today and giving us the opportunity to share valuable resources and information. Please feel free to reach out to us. Where our contact information will be available to you. It's in a chat. And we look forward to hearing from you soon and sharing with you some additional resources in weeks to come.